and welcome to today's episode. We have another great discussion, topic, and program planned by ActiveProspect to help the lead generation and performance marketing industry navigate the most recent FCC one-to-one consent rules, record-keeping requirements, and the related updates to the TCPA, or Telephone Consumer Protection Act. We hope today's discussion will help you translate these changes with more confidence and a focus on compliance. Today's topic, Lead Gen 2.0, a detailed compliance checklist for one-to-one consent management. First, some housekeeping information. In our webinar platform, there is a chat icon and a questions icon, and we encourage you to ask us questions throughout the session. Please use the chat section for general comments and interactions with other participants, and please use the question section if there are items you would like us to answer. We will leave time at the end to review and respond to your questions. And look for a poll section where we have a few insightful questions we want to ask you in the audience today. Be on the lookout for a brief survey at the end of the webinar, and we encourage you to share your feedback and include any topics you would like us to explore in the future. And a link to today's recording will be emailed out tomorrow morning for reference and sharing with your colleagues. Hello, I'm Benjamin Farrar. I'm the Director of Privacy, Security, and Compliance at ActiveProspect. For the past 20 plus years, I have worked for companies in the performance marketing, market research, financial services, and healthcare space, mostly focused on data privacy, data regulation compliance, internal auditing, and information security. Over time and in all those industries, significant data regulations were passed, and I was on the team responsible for reviewing the new rules, working to seek clarity, and establishing a compliance program. And now for a brief background and introduction, I'd like to pass the mic to our first featured guest, Scott Hettman, Sales and Marketing Manager at Boberdoo.
I'm mute.
Yeah.
All right, I managed to screw up the very first one, so hopefully I won't do that again, everybody. As Benjamin said, I'm Scott. I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager here at Boberdoo. I'm kind of the jack of all trades here, so hopefully at least everybody has seen my face. So I'm responsible for all things related to our prospects and our clients. I was actually a client of Boberdoo before I came to work for Boberdoo, so I've been in the lead generation business for almost 20 years. And I've got to see the lead generation business evolve over those years from very basic lead matching to the sophisticated lead routing and the one-to-one consent that we are going to cover in great detail today.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Happy to have you with us. And also Brett Hettman, Client Service Manager at Boberdoo.
You too, Brett.
Service Manager here at Boberdoo. Nice to meet you. Also messed up the mute button, of course. Yes, I have been at Boberdoo since 2008, so I've had a lot of experience working in the lead gen industry. I mainly tackle the technical side of things along with the client relationships that Boberdoo has with its users. And very much yin to Scott's yang, whereas he handles much of the sales and marketing stuff. I'm kind of the other side of the coin to help handle these integrations to get set up and working for everyone.
Excellent. Really happy to have you both here today. Some real industry veterans. It's going to help our conversation topic today. So looking forward to it. So the compliance countdown is on, right? Today, October 9th, 2024. We are 111 days until the FCC's TCPA one-to-one consent update is set to be enforced. And with that equally round, odd number, you can perform the easy math to see we are fast approaching the important 90, 60, and 30-day period for a healthy lead generation pipeline, with the leads that you are planning to contact on or after January 27th needing to be presented with one-to-one consent notice and having supporting evidence or record-keeping requirements. It is operational go time, and we are here to support you and the industry in this effort in our topic and discussion today. But to set the scene, let's go to our first poll question to see How close are you to being ready for one-to-one consent? I've got option A, I'm ready right now. B, I'm testing options currently. Or C, I have an idea of what I want to do. Or D, I have not started yet. So see the poll section to respond to that question, and we'll circle back in a few moments to see the responses there. So Scott, let's kick off the discussion and tell us about Boberdoo and the lead distribution software services you all provide.
More mute.
Absolutely. So Boberdoo provides software to the lead generation industry. We help our clients route, bill, and scale their lead generation activities. We have a generic solution that can be highly customized around the lead generation methods and activities. So our clients are typically lead sellers, but in many cases, they are companies that have unique processes. And so the idea is that our software can be bent around whatever the flow of that particular company is, so that they can effectively deliver those marketing activities to their clients, whether those are direct retail partners or whether those are brokers that end up delivering those leads to those end retail buyers.
Okay, excellent. And our service, we have a similar solution called Lead Conduit. So we're here partners, which also represents the industry flexible solutions, whether you choose Boberdoo or whether you choose Lead Conduit, find the one that works for you to help in your lead routing solutions. It's important to note that neither of our solutions, we're not lead buyers or sellers. We're both a platform. We're software as a service, really a data processor only around those components for lead processing and analytics and routing and all of those specific items there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Benjamin, is that neither one of us have bought leads or sold leads, and we're just software providers.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our poll. Let's see how ready the people are in our audience. So we'll generate those results. And so we've got 20% said they are ready right now. Excellent. I know they've been watching our content and they are rock and roll, ready to go. We've got 50% that say they're testing options currently. That's where I expect also proactive people to be sitting around in that space. 22% say they have an idea of what they want to do. Clearly, those are kind of discussions that we're hearing. We've got 7% that haven't started yet. Does that represent what you're seeing in the marketplace, Scott and Brett, about those preparations?
Yeah, I think so. Those kind of generally align with what we're seeing as well, right? It's a whole new kind of endeavor, right? That might get a little freaked out about it. So all the prep you can do to get ready for it is better for everyone. So I'm loving to see that majority of everyone here is either ready or testing.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would say that especially those people that are sitting in that 50% are discovering what Brett and I are experiencing now, is that testing experience for the one-to-one consent is significantly different than the testing experience for the standard process of ping post has been traditionally. And it's a lot more extensive. Yeah, it's a lot more extensive, and there's a lot more scenarios that could possibly be or need to be tested in the one-to-one environment. And so there's a lot more things that need to be spec'd out ahead of time and then during that testing process. So it's no longer as easy as it once was.
Yes, indeed. So Brett, we're happy to have you here today because the new trusted form verify one-to-one consent check feature is supported by Boberdoo. So share some more information with us about that.
Yes, absolutely. That's kind of one of the things we wanted to make sure that we did, was ensure that this type of setup is as easy to set up as possible, right? So we want full, what we call plug and play, or bring your own credentials. As long as you have your key token value from ActiveProspect, you're able to simply copy and paste that into the Boberdoo system to set up your new verify one-to-one consent check. And so making the setup as easy as possible was very important, like I said. And once you're in the system, now there will be rules, and you can see the little screenshot here that popped up, just a kind of a brief glimpse at to what some of the rules may encompass here. But essentially, when you're going through, you're ensuring that the consumer, the lead, has selected the appropriate, one-to-one consent option for that advertiser. It's verifying in the processing that the lead has all this appropriate language and consent check information based upon the back end of the form. Not to get into the technical stuff too much, right? But as long as your form's set up, you plug in your ActiveProspect credentials into your Boberdoo system. You can then enable it so when the leads flow through, these extra checks for the verify one-to-one are then run.
Excellent. Yeah, we have a screenshot there showing that it's running in the Boberdoo platform with some different kinds of options that are available. So that's great. We were really happy to have you all partner with us on this. So to mention, for those that aren't familiar with Trusted Form, so let me give you a quick information about that who aren't familiar. So Trusted Form from ActiveProspect is the ultimate consent compliance solution for the lead generation industry. Currently, Trusted Form documents TCPA consent on digital lead forms for over 55,000 websites and counting. And Trusted Form helps brands document TCPA consent and can help you identify if supplied lead transactions were presented with appropriate consent to contact language before communication outreach. Trusted Form has 4 unique services. There's Trusted Form Certify, there's Trusted Form Verify, and there's Trusted Form Retain and Trusted Form Insights. So Verify helps optimize the consent capture process by enabling customers to identify and categorize TCPA consent language for different lead vendors and document and archive prior express written consent to contact leads by phone or text message that are originating from web forms or social lead ads. And now the new Verify one-to-one consent check feature helps with evidence and signals indicating if a one-to-one consent to contact was presented and acknowledged by the consumer. You can use Lead Conduit to process and route these leads and have it deliver them to your CRM or customer relationship databases or dialing software. And of course, Boberdoo. Today, I'm happy to feature them as the first lead routing platform to partner with ActiveProspect to support the new Verify one-to-one consent check feature in their software and services. The Verify one-to-one consent check feature is flexible. It supports many of the most common web form elements in lead generation, including verifying location of the notice and consent language, single or multiple advertiser offer presentations, multiple checkboxes, select all checkboxes, and it includes support for selecting logos and in consent to contact. If you would like to learn more about activeprospect.com, you can also respond yes to the poll question that's up now. Would you like to get a demo of our Verify product? So Scott, the new one-to-one consent is going to have impacts on the industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about exclusive leads and shared lead models in this new feature?
Yes. So one of the big changes is that paywall, if you will, or that link out to a list of all of the potential companies that may contact a consumer if they provide a exception to the DNC in that TCPA language is no longer allowed. What will have to be is an explicit company or a list of companies with checkboxes for that consumer to give that express one-to-one consent. And so the prevailing models are an exclusive or a shared model to be presented to the consumer. So in an exclusive model, as you're presenting here, the idea is that the consumer would go through some qualifying fields or questions that can then be used to determine which companies would match to that consumer's request and then be sorted. And one company could then be dynamically inserted into the generic TCPA language as a dynamic match. So in this example here, in the bolded text, you'll see Connected Solar, which would be the dynamic matching company, which is exclusively matched to that consumer's request. So the idea here is that you can still have a generic offer and then a dynamic matching company inserted into the TCPA language for that consumer, and then match that request in an exclusive environment, and still maintain that one-to-one consent. So when that's, I guess the important things as a lead generator is that you want to make sure that you're matching the value proposition of your landing page to that new process that you are presenting to the consumer. You know, if you are presenting, submit your information once and compare 5 lenders or contractors, and then now are inserting a dynamic matching single exclusive match, that could lead to inconsistencies, changes in conversion rates, and things like that. And then conversely, as you're showing now, a non-exclusive match. So conversely, when that qualifying fields gets submitted by the consumer, or a ping, and a non-exclusive or a shared scenario is returned. Well, in this scenario here, the consumer is presented with checkboxes next to individual matches. And so the consumer can select one or multiple companies, which they may then choose to receive their information. And so in this case here, we have more options and more potential matches on that post. And so this can lead to much more post scenarios and differences in transactions for things like post rejects, and much more complexity as far as the final transaction is concerned. And so those types of things can lead to a lot of differences in the final transaction when it comes to the lead and what happens at that final consumer's transaction. So ultimately, the lead generator has to make sure that they are matching their value proposition, their source settings, with what they are doing with their exclusive and shared scenarios, so that they are returning back to the consumer their matches, and then they can code their retail and broker relationships accordingly. So in this scenario here, if they want an exclusive relationship, they can set their websites up accordingly. And if they want a shared relationship, they can set their websites up accordingly. And if they want to take advantage of their best scenario, whether it is exclusive or shared, they can do that. But those are decisions now as a lead generator that you have to make, and then communicate that with their broker partners.
Yeah. Thanks for walking through that, because I don't think those in the lead generation industry understand those differences. Not everyone outside of that, or that's just trying to participate in it, realizes the real consideration of whether it's going to be a shared lead or exclusive, and all the points and configurations that can happen beyond that. And some industry verticals, right, they lend themselves better to the different pathways that are going to be chosen, right?
I think so. I think what we're seeing, like, for example, if you look at an exclusive, if you look at legal, we're seeing a lot of exclusive models being done in the legal vertical, where that is only one partner being dynamically inserted into the TCPA text or the language for legal. But Brett, what would you say another vertical that would be primarily legal?
Primarily like exclusive, right?
Yeah. Or, excuse me, primarily exclusive.
Yeah, so I would probably say health insurance, the health services, health insurance or Medicare. Those will tend to be generally more exclusive. Not to say that they cannot be shared,
Right.
but mostly based on what we experience and what we see a lot of our clients use, those two verticals, along with legal, really are using exclusive more often than shared.
But then
Yeah,
you
and
have
then
those verticals that, are more comparison based in nature, like home improvement or auto insurance, where it's just more natural for a compare your best five roofing quotes, or, in auto insurance, three carriers being returned, and having those being returned to a consumer is a much more natural flow. And so that case is, testing those responses and those multiple sellers is a much more, you know, common landing page experience.
yeah,
Um,
and that's the real service that when lead generation done correctly and transparently provides, right? I mean, someone
exactly.
going to a website, interested in products or services, and needing to do some comparison or not sure what they want to do, whether that's price or location or all of those sorts of things, it can really serve the marketplace and help connect an interested individual who wants to receive more information about a product or service and be contacted. So yeah, when lead generation is done correctly, there's different ways to do it, and those are the considerations. So let's do a poll now as well to get some more insight. What lead models are you thinking will work best for you in preparations for this January 2025 one-to-one consent deadline? Are you thinking exclusive leads only with one-to-one disclosures? Are you thinking shared leads where you're going to display more than one matching company? C, a mix of both exclusive and shared leads? Or D, not really sure just yet? So we'll allow people to take a look at that, and please provide your responses in the poll section.
I guess while you're taking the poll, if I could just share one interesting test that a client shared with us. They primarily had done exclusive, and they wanted to test that shared model for one-to-one consent. And so they did not adjust their value proposition. And so they had, get matched to the best contractor on their landing page, but they were still showing multiple selling companies in their beta test. And so they couldn't figure out, they were still getting one selection from the consumer. And it wasn't until they realized that the value proposition was still singular by nature in terms of the action item. So it was select the best contractor. They were presenting multiple matches. And so the call to action was still select the single best one, even though multiple matches were being presented. And so it wasn't until they changed that call to action to compare multiple contractors as the call to action that they started to see the effects of presenting multiple sellers to the consumer in the new one-to-one environment. And so sometimes those simple changes on the landing page can have drastic effects in both what a consumer views and what they are selecting in terms of those matching companies.
Yeah, absolutely. A very good and tangible example of those key decisions and differences. Okay, let's take a look at the results. What lead model are you thinking work best for you? And we've got 38% said exclusive leads only with one-to-one. 8% said shared leads. 37% a mix of both exclusive and shared leads, and 16% not sure yet. So what do you think of those results?
Seems about expected. The exclusive is the path of least resistance.
Yes, and the easiest
and
figure.
right. And I think that the shared does require beta testing, right? Because you never know what the effects are. And I think it is very vertical specific. So I think if you are a lead generator, and I think it's certainly worth a beta test, because again, depending on your vertical, you can, if you're selling exclusively and you have an opportunity to present 5 matches to a consumer, then there are revenue opportunities there.
Excellent. All right. So next, we promised a checklist. So let's highlight some of those. And thanks for your input on this, Scott and Brett, the consideration. So these are some important conversation topics that those out there are going to need to explore with their lead generation partners. Doing this now, if you're looking to set up the one-to-one in either exclusive lead model or shared lead model. So we've got some of these on screen right now. And so checklist for lead website sources. Number one says determined if owned and operated or brokered sources. What do you mean by that?
So in terms of that, traditionally, many cases, you would just create one source and hand it off along with your API specs and give those to somebody for integrations. But
sources just being like
that,
campaigns or tracking variables.
Right. And so now, given that those, just talking about that exclusive and shared scenario, some individual website owners are going to say, I only want to do an exclusive. Some are going to say shared. And so now you're going to have those more detailed conversations. So you're going to have to create separate sources for brokered websites versus owned and operated websites, because there may be differences in those exclusive and shared scenarios.
Okay. All right. So number two, you have labeling sources, sending one-to-one leads versus standard or traditional leads.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at kind of your ecosystem as a lead generator, you may have still leads coming in under your standard processing. You may have lead buyers that require one-to-one consent. You may have lead buyers that do not require it. You may have sources sending in leads that have one-to-one consent, those that don't. And so you're going to need to be able to organize your entire lead ecosystem according to those two standard, or those two labels, so that you can make sure those who require it one-to-one are getting one-to-one and only one-to-one, and those that are eligible to get those standard leads that you can monetize are still getting those. And that type of labeling needs to be present in the lead system so that you can set those sources and be able to have those throughout your system.
Okay. Third item here, you have issue new credentials and testing. No longer one and done.
Absolutely. So the idea here is we've seen a lot of people try to use existing sources and API keys and credentials in general to just start testing with the new one-to-one, try to just start, here's the new API, just
their idea being, right, hey, they're already set up. I'm just going to give them something new to overwrite what they have set up. But we really kind of going off of number one and number two, really urging and recommending to separate these out. We keep on saying the word sources. Again, these are just like tracking variables for your campaigns inside of Boberdoo, so you know where the lead is coming from, right? And the idea is if someone's currently sending you leads, they have one particular variable. When they start sending you ping post consent, we are urging to use it under another separate variable, so that way you can easily track and diagnose and compare who is sending into what API and what leads can go to what buyers, kind of just playing more into that number one and two from the checklist.
Okay. Excellent.
Absolutely. And then when we talk about testing, it used to be oftentimes you would submit a test, and then if you got a success, maybe you would submit another test to try and get an error, and then that was sufficient. But now, because there are other use cases that may come into play. What happens if you have a partner returned, but they are not selected by the consumer? Or what happens if there are multiple sellers returned? There could be different combinations that are sent in on the post. So there are more combinations or potential combinations that need to be tested out in the one-to-one environment. And so testing, when we say no longer one and done, it means no longer a situation where you can just do one test, get a success, and then set a delivery or an integration block. We're really saying, like, testing needs to be a more comprehensive process of several testing scenarios that should be set up and put in place so that you can set a partner live over a series of time, as opposed to just getting one single success and considering every potential scenario with a partner live based off of one success.
Yeah, it reminds me of the mic check, right? Testing 1, 2, 3. It's not just
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
where we
Exactly.
go all the way through. Check. Keep testing. Okay, excellent. So the fourth one we have here is check that trusted form verifying one-to-one consent check tags have been properly placed on lead source sites.
So this goes back to the trusted form verify one-to-one consent check. One of the requirements to get that set up is that on the website that's generating the lead, there are what are called consent check tags that are placed in the website code. This is just to highlight, this is the submit button, this is the offer, this is the language, and that's so ActiveProspect can then take all that information and compare it. And so since that is something that has to be done on the website, right, where the lead is getting generated from, that is something only someone who owns that website is able to do. And so that it becomes another kind of part to lead into from number 3 of the testing, right? It's no longer one and done testing for the form either. You're going to have to, probably do a number of different tests to test those different scenarios, make sure the consent tags are working properly.
Yeah, and if you'd like more information, you can see our previous webinar where we announced the trusted form verify one-to-one, and we're also going to be having future sessions where we go into more depth and deeper conversations around that. But there's an alternative that's also available, right?
Yeah, I guess just to tie that back as well to all the way back to kind of follow up to number 1 and why more sources and things like that are needed now, is really to tie that back to your trusted form one-to-one. Is previously, if you did one source for a publisher and one test, and there was the tag on that one source and that one test, and it was successful, and you said that, and it was considered working, but then that tag was not on a brokered source correctly or properly, then none of those leads that were through that brokered source would be able to be sold successfully to any of the partners, but only those that through that one source that were tested would be. And so that's a good example of the more detailed, nuanced testing that needs to be done because of the additional tags and things that are required based on the one-to-one.
All right. And if implementing the tags are concerning, you all have a solution that helps make that easier out of the box, right?
Yeah, exactly. So with Boberdoo Form Builder, something that we have standard option, but we also have a dynamic consent that specifically addresses one-to-one consent signals. You can build a form in the Boberdoo system, and then through an embed code, push that to any website property. That can be a property that you own, or you can get that to a publisher and have them put that on their own website. And then that consistently places those trusted form tags where they need to be, so that you can collect the trusted form or generate the trusted form certificate and then run it through the outside services that you previously had shown the screenshot of. So it is a good way to be able to implement the trusted form, verify one-to-one consent at scale, and not have to do a lot of development work.
Yeah, if you don't have your own developer to build your own website, the form can just be copy paste, little snippet of code that has it already set up for you.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So now let's shift over checklist for lead generation buyers. All right. So the first one, determine the company or legal entity name that needs to be presented to the consumer, right? This is a part of the updates that are required, and certainly encourage you all to seek compliance and legal counsel in this to make sure you're interpreting that correctly. Like, what is an entity, right? There's things such as DBAs are doing business as, but the regulation specifically wants a legal entity name. So get some legal input to make sure that you're presenting that company name on the web form that connects with that, and that can be subject to some interpretation. So make sure you get that lined up correctly.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. And that may be something different than if you're a broker, for example. That may be something different than what you call the company internally. So that's something you definitely want to make sure that you are you're checking to make sure that you're not referring to them as something internally that might get returned back to the consumer. That's something that we've seen. And then the other thing is that is something that may get returned in a response through an integration. And so you want to make sure that any integrations that are getting returned, you're looking at what is being returned in the response, because that would be what is being returned back to either a publisher or to your landing page. And so that is being essentially done through code. So you want to make sure that you have checks in place since that is getting returned directly to a consumer.
Yeah, that is a precise thing. What you're expecting to receive, the exact name. So that's important for those communications to be precise and to function correctly. Number two, you have determined partners that will be requiring one-to-one consent.
Exactly. So very similar to the source side, you have partners that may require consent, some that may not require consent, but that is going to be important for determining which of your incoming sources are eligible to send leads to different partners of yours, because presumably you may have different types of incoming traffic, some that will have the one-to-one consent available and some that may not. And so you can't set up a flow of traffic that would not have the one-to-one consent that we just covered previously to be eligible for a partner that requires one-to-one consent. And so having that labeling capabilities is going to be important, so you don't set up a traffic flow where you're sending a lead to somebody that requires one-to-one consent that doesn't have it.
Okay, yeah. Number three, determine partners that will be using ATDS.
Yeah, so that's essentially the flip side of that. You may have situations where lead generators are very concerned with who you sell a lead to, and they may have restrictions on who they want you selling a lead to. And so buyers that use an ATDS may be viewed as higher risk. And so you may want to restrict in certain cases the traffic or the leads that you send to those types of partners. And so knowing those that use an ATDS versus those that don't, I think is important, or we think is important. And so determining that, being able to label that in the system is important.
Yeah, automatic telephone dialing systems, and that's key for TCPA. So that's the crosshairs right there, the use of that and definition of that as well. Number four, label partners as retail or broker.
Absolutely. So that is whether or not we call them retail broker. That's an internal label, but everybody kind of
Calls it their own
terminology is
thing.
different in everyone. So a retail partner would be a direct service provider, a contractor, an agent, an insurance provider. So that is the end service provider, the matching seller, as the FCC calls them, that is getting returned back to the consumer as the matching company to be presented to that consumer, versus a broker. So a broker is a company that is going to essentially have an end seller that is going to be returned through that broker to the lead generation company. A reseller, a lead generation company, an aggregator are all synonymous there. And so those are the two main classifications that we use internally to determine the different types, because the big thing in terms of labeling would be you would never want to return the broker company name back to the consumer, because the broker is not the end selling company that is contacting them.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's important for that FCC to wonder what.
Absolutely. Okay. And then the last one, you've got this tiered. So it says obtain new credentials and test. Take us through this tiering here.
Yeah, so this is where when you're testing, we alluded it to a little bit on the source side, but when you're talking about testing, when you're selling leads to brokers, there's a lot, and especially in a shared environment, there's a lot to cover because of the way that bidding works. So as a retail buyer, you could possibly have new specs. They may have different things that a retail service provider may want to return, specifically around that company and legal entity name. And so that is, an important thing that that you'll want to communicate with them. Also, maybe whether or not they're willing to participate in an exclusive or a shared scenario. That is also something that they may or may not participate in. As far as brokers are concerned, similar conversation as far as exclusive or shared. But then when we're talking about shared, we have bidding. So when we're talking about bidding, there's two ways for a broker to bid on a lead. They can bid on a shared scenario for the lead as a whole, meaning they would return multiple companies and one bid, or they can return an individual bid for each matching company. And so that is an important difference because of how your system would have to handle those two. So when you look at handling one bid for multiple selling companies, your system then would have to take that bid and that scenario as a whole and present that to the entire scenario to the consumer, all or nothing. So you could not combine that scenario with any other of your scenarios. Versus if your broker returned an individual bid for each of those matching companies, because in that scenario, you have an individual bid for each of the matching companies from that broker. That could then be combined with individual bids from any other matching company, whether that is a retail company in your system or a matching company returned from any other broker in your system. And so then that gives you the ability to create more matching scenarios in your system and return better matches to your consumer.
Okay.
So we advocate an individual bid scenario.
Okay, excellent. And thanks for assembling those and putting all of those pieces together, because these are discussions and things that need to happen and conversations right now for changing. So it's great to bring that to light and make sure people are having discussions in and around this space.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So now let's shift to questions that are from the audience. Thank you all who are out there. So let's take a look in the questions section, and Scott or Brett, take a look and see if you have a good question that for a response there. I see one. I can take the first one. It says, for insurance agencies, are we going to need consent for each agency or consent for an overall company like Allstate? Right. This alludes to the point we were stating earlier, which is consult your legal counsel for the precise answer to that. It can have some complexity, and they're in the best position to give you the most qualified and best answer to that very, very valid question, which is causing some concern and anxiety for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Is there another question you see there? It's good to respond to.
So it looks like that first one got 7 upvotes about the exclusive and shared models. What adjustments need to be made to integrate one-to-one consent? Yes. So the big changes there are when it is an exclusive, when it is an exclusive match, you can dynamically insert the matching exclusive match company into the TCPA language and not have to present checkboxes. But when there is a shared scenario, you have to present individual checkboxes for each company to the consumer, giving them the option of selecting which of those matching companies that they want. So there is an inherent risk of the shared scenario depending on what that consumer selects.
All right.
Mike's last question here. What if the lead generator obtains one-to-one consent from the lead and the lead generator auto dials the lead and transfers the call to the buyers? Do the buyers need to have one-to-one consent in this situation? The way I have always heard is that consent does not transfer over. So they have to have consent to the buyer in that situation. So the buyers need to have one-to-one consent as well.
Okay. Any other good questions there?
I see. Just going down
The
list
15
here.
buyers one, they need to be all mentioned, I would assume, right?
You want to read the question out loud?
What should be done when you have more than 15 buyers and you're selling shared leads? Do you need to mention all of the clients in the list? I would assume that yes, each of them would have to be.
If you want to present 15 buyers to the consumer, then yeah, for 15 checkboxes, that would be what you would do.
Yeah, and that's the nature of one-to-one. It's trying to provide transparency so that the individual is making the decision about who they want to hear from. That that can have some unintended consequences, but that is the intent of the rules, so that they know who will be expecting a call. It's trying to help address unsolicited phone calls and text messages from a collection of unidentified brands that will be reaching out to you.
I saw several questions related to post rejects. So I guess maybe to address it kind of generically, or generally, as opposed to, there was one as many buyers post reject if the TCPA language does not match what they have in their system. How will AP verify or handle dynamic changes within the TCPA language so valid leads are not being post rejected? That's an interesting question in that I guess a valid lead theoretically would not be post-rejected if there was valid language, and that's where we advocate, at least through the Boberdoo forms, is that it is a consistent set of language that can then be dynamically populated with, for example, the company name, so that you do have consistent language across your forms, and then that would be submitted consistently to, for example, the trusted form verify, so that you can have consistent process and consistent submissions, and then work with your buyers so that I believe Benjamin, uh, uh, lead buyers can then submit an individual language to their trusted form account as an approved language specifically for that flow, so that they know that's like an approved language coming through like their trusted form account, right?
Yeah,
So
correct.
that's where like that increased communication between a buyer and a seller has to come into play, because before it might have been just a more of a generic process, whereas now that lead seller is going to have to say, hey, all of my leads come through this form, and this form dynamically inserts your matching company into this TCPA language. My leads now come through the Boberdoo form or this API. We use outside service to verify the trusted form, one-to-one verify. Here is my language. You're going to add it to your trusted form account so that when we run the check, it will verify it on our end. You can verify it on your end, and we can post reject it if it's not there. And that make sure that that is placed in processing before we attempt it to your CRM, Mr. or Mrs. Lead Buyer. And so the idea is that we're trying to put Boberdoo and ActiveProspect are trying to put these checks into place so that it happens before the lead is posted to the lead buyer, to minimize post rejects, not eliminate, minimize. And that, the idea is that leaves lead QC leads. So those are leads that do not pass your lead scoring. Nothing anybody can do about that. And then that then brings us down to duplicate leads, right? So that is a conversation that we think lead sellers need to have with lead buyers on how many and what is your duplicate check. Are you deduping on 1-year-old leads? Because quite honestly, did you get one-to-one consent on a year-old lead? And Benjamin, I think you can speak to this. Like, what is the ruling on, like, if they got a lead a year ago with one-to-one consents? Like, should they be deduping? Should a lead buyer be deduping on a lead that they bought in January of 2023 with these new ruling of one-to-one consent? That's a very interesting question, I think.
Yeah, you would want to have evidence of one-to-one consent being captured.
So, theoretically, you wouldn't really have a lot of deduplicates because you would want to capture the new one-to-one consent so you could turn around and call them, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, we have time for one more question, so pick one more.
So, you look good, guys. And see, is there any bunch of upvotes?
How does ActiveProspect's trusted form verify product help ensure proper one-to-one consent? What are some of the best practices for setting it up for Boberdoo? Probably a good one to close on here, since it covers kind of both of these setups. So it helps ensure the proper one-to-one consent, because going back to what we were talking about a little bit before, there's these tags that go into the code of the form that highlight certain parts of the form itself. So the form contains the fields that are filled out. There's a submit button. There's the text, TCPA consent language. All that appears on the form. But in the background of the form, there's these tags highlight where these different parts are. So ActiveProspect can look and grab that information. And what it does is it then compares to the language you have set within your ActiveProspect login to make sure that the name. So let's go back to the screenshot we had up a while ago, was like the connected solar was bolded, right? That was the company name for the TCPA text saying who it should have matched to. The submission to ActiveProspect takes all that information from the form, compares it to what's found in ActiveProspect to make sure that in that situation, connected solar is the name that was in this consent language. It was found in the text. The button that was clicked was submit. Make sure like it doesn't say, hey, click here for more information, but it's really secretly a submit button that sends and sells your information somewhere. That's the whole point of this integration, is that it helps protect and make sure that the consent is found. So that's how it's all set up in both the ActiveProspect system and Boberdoo. Best practices for setting that up would be to first set it up inside the systems and then actually run some tests to see. When they're sent through, you'll see in the Boberdoo system there's logs that show here's what happened in the verify consent check.
Yeah, no, I translate that. It's looking for signals that the web form was presented in a one-to-one consent-like manner, right? There's no predefined, like this is the exact way of what one-to-one looks like. It can look like many different things, and it's in place to have received the signals that are going to give you an indication, like if you've encountered and tagged those things, that this is very likely, most likely, going to be a consent that's presented in a one-to-one consent-like manner. But again, people still need to check and have an audit process for looking at those items as well. Okay, well, that's going to do it for us today. I want to thank everyone out there for your time and participation, for the importance of compliance in today's regulatory landscape, to understanding how platforms like ActiveProspect and Boberdoo can simplify your processes. I hope you're walking away with some actionable insights to elevate your lead generation strategies. As we discuss, compliance with the updated FCC TCPA requirements is not just about avoiding penalties. It's about building trust and optimizing your entire lead ecosystem. And by adopting a one-to-one consent framework, you can future-proof your business and make the preparations ahead of the January 2025 deadline. If you're ready to dive deeper into one-to-one consent management and you want to see how our solutions can work for you, I encourage you to explore an overview of Trusted Forms Verify product. We're going to share some links in the chat section now. And if you'd like to learn more about Boberdoo and their lead routing solutions, also we'll be sharing some links in the chat section as well. Be sure to stay tuned for episode 18 as our FCC series continues. We will be exploring innovative solutions to optimize your lead gen strategies, scheduled for 2 weeks from now with our friends from Shape Software. And lastly, I want to give a big thank you to our panelists, Scott Hettman and Brett Hettman from Boberdoo, for sharing their experience and insights with us today. And also thanks to each of you for engaging in the chat and asking questions today. And we are confident that with the right tools, you are on your way to mastering lead generation in this new era of compliance. Thank you. Have a great day and look forward to seeing you in the next session.
Mm-hmm.